Hello and welcome to introduction number 4 to The Last Road Home. There are a couple places in this book where I suggest that we, believers, the sons of God, in our next life in the heavens, we're going to be going out and rescuing non-human creatures. Now, I might be wrong, but I'm guessing this isn't something you studied last Sunday in Sunday school. So we're going to do a straight-up Bible study, verse to verse to verse to verse. And I'm going to try to impress on you two things. One is the size of God's creation. I bet you it's bigger than you think it is. And number two, the size of our role, our job in creation. All right, let's get started. I'm going to start with Colossians chapter 1, verse 15, where it says, "And he," that is Jesus Christ, he is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For by him all things were created, all things, both in the heavens, interesting that that's plural, and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions, rulers or authorities, all things have been created by him and for him, and he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. Wow, that's a mouthful, isn't it? It says that things in the heavens, and you might think, well, that just means stuff in the sky or stars, moons. Yes, it might mean that, but it probably means more than that. It probably is a reference. The Apostle Paul's the writer here, and he has spoken elsewhere about been taken up to the third heaven and so forth and so on and so forth. So my intuition says he's not talking about sky. He's talking about heaven, the heavens. And then he says visible and invisible, and then he gives a list of 4 categories of things that are invisible. What was that list again? Thrones, dominions, rulers, or authorities. Very strange list. Let me ask you to use your intuition for a minute, your theological thinking cap. Do you think the invisible creation is bigger or the visible? Which one is larger, do you think? Now, we don't know, and I'm not being adamant here, but I am suggesting, at the very least, that there's a lot going on, if you will, behind the scenes. There are a lot of invisible entities, and we have that suggested. Let me ask your inner child theologian again. He gives a list here of 4 categories of creatures. These are beings, but these are creatures, clearly beings. Do you have the feeling that this is an exhaustive list, or is he just throwing out? So, well, actually, we have a hint to that. Let's turn over to Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians. I have to decide which way I'm turning in my Bible. Ephesians chapter 3. Ephesians chapter 1. Where Paul, in a very, very similar passage, he says that Christ was raised from the dead. I'm in verse 20, paraphrasing verse 20, and seated at the right hand of God. Now, verse 21, far above, listen to this list, far above all rule and authority and power and dominion. Same list. And then Paul adds one more. And every name that is named, not only in this age, but also in the one to come. So he really expands this concept quite a bit. He says there are going to be creatures and beings, these 4 that he lists, plus anything else you can come up with. They've all been created by him, and Jesus has been set over them. Not only in this age, but also in the one to come. Interesting. So I'm going to suggest, again, not being adamant, but suggesting, what I will be adamant is that there's a lot of good stuff going on that's invisible to us right now. I'm going to suggest that there is actually more invisible in creation than visible. And that's just my intuition. You don't have to agree with me, but nevertheless, there is a lot, whether it comes to a contest between the two, is not required. That's an interesting thought, isn't it? So here's fact number 1. Jesus created everything, and he sustains everything, visible and invisible, on the earth and in the heavens, plural, in this age and in the one to come. So my question is now, when you As a follower of Jesus, when you bring up the word creation, all of creation, what should come to your mind? Yes, of course, birds, bees, flowers, trees, mountains, clouds, armadillos, all of that is creation. But you should also be thinking, ooh, wait, plus invisible natures, invisible beings, invisible entities, rulers, thrones, dominions, authorities, and anything else you can come up with according to Ephesians chapter 1. That's interesting. Next question. What is man's role in this creation? I want you to turn over to, I say you turn over as if you got a Bible there. Maybe you do, but you should go grab one to make sure that I'm not just making stuff up out of the air. Hebrews chapter 2, verse 6, where it says, "But one has testified somewhere, saying, what is man that you remember him?" This is a quote, of course, as you know, from Psalm 8. "What is man that you remember him, or the son of man that you are concerned about him? You've made him for a little while lower than the angels. You've crowned him with glory and honor." And listen to this. "You have appointed him," who? Mankind, "appointed humanity over the works of your hands. You have put all things in subjection under his feet." Now, the writer of the Hebrews goes on to make a brilliant point about how Jesus, the Christ, is the perfect completion of man, and all things are under his feet. But it's before that, it says, all things are put under mankind's feet. So we got two things going on. How big is creation? More than birds and bees and mountains and trees and a deer drinking by the water brook? Bigger than that, also thrones, rulers, dominions, powers, and authorities, and anything else you can come up with, the things in the heavens and in things invisible in this age and in the one to come. Is that all part of the creation? Is all that part of the creation? Absolutely it is. And this verse, along with others, we're going to look at another one in just a minute, says that all that is put under our feet. Whoa. See, I think most, myself included, most believers have gone most of our life. We've heard these verses. We think, yeah, God put authority. God put creation under the authority of Adam and Eve. Husband the earth, nourish it, and make it flourish. And we've thought about nature, flowers, birds, animals. But it doesn't say that. It says all of creation, especially right there, expressly in Hebrews. Well, let's go to the other passage, and that's in Romans chapter 8, where this very same thought is echoed. All right, I'm going to start at Romans 8:18. "For I consider that the sufferings of this present age are not worthy to be compared with the glory that is to be revealed in us. For the anxious longing of the creation waits eagerly for the revealing, the unfolding, the manifesting of the sons of God." For the creation, all right, I'm going to stop right there. The picture here, and I think it's the Phillips translation that puts it that all of creation is standing on tiptoe, anxiously looking for the return of Jesus? No, for the sons of God. Now, and by the way, there have been various groups in the church that have taken on themselves the title, "We are the sons of God, the rest of you guys are not." And we're not going into that kind of thinking at all. This is simply a reference to the body of Christ, to believers all around the world and throughout all history. All of creation is eagerly... No, wait. All of creation. Birds and bees, flowers and trees? Yes. But no. How much of creation is eagerly waiting? All of it. Birds, bees, flowers, and trees, plus what? Thrones, rulers, dominions, powers, authorities, and any name in the heavens and on earth, visible and invisible. All of is that not what the text says? Hebrews says, you put all of creation under man's feet, and this one says all of creation is itching for the sons of God, the people of God, to show up, to take charge, to manifest. That's a lot bigger than we're supposed to plant a garden. I mean, yes, we're supposed to plant a garden, but this is a lot bigger than that. Are you with me? Let me read then what comes next. I'll start again at verse 19. "For the anxious longing of creation," stepping out, standing in tiptoe, "waits eagerly for the revealing of the sons of God. For, listen to this. This verse is critically important. For the creation, and again, now you and I, when we hear the word creation, we're not just picturing a beautiful Bob Ross painting. Are you with me? It's Bob Ross painting with invisible beings, right? He never did paint that. Happy little squirrels as far as he got. For the creation was subjected to futility, frustration, brokenness. The creation was subjected, pushed down, if you will, to futility. Listen to this next phrase. Not of its own will. Some translations say it's not of its own choice, not because the creation chose to enter to futility, to rebel against God. No, not of its own choice. Whose choice was it then? The Creator's, God's choice. God, Father, Son, Spirit, they created this beautiful, perfect, visible and invisible creation. Then the masters of creation, Adam and Eve, and humanity fell, is the theological term, right? So now they're in a state of brokenness and sin, and we couldn't have a perfect idyllic environment when the leaders, the boss masters, the guardians of the galaxy were in a broken state. So the Creator pushed down all of creation to be co-equal, to be on the same playing field with humanity. Wow. And it says, not of their own choice, not of their own will. So this means that there are some parts of creation that never did rebel against God, but got pushed down. What a mean thing for God to do. God is so mean. If you think that, let's keep listening, keep reading my book. Books, plural. Why did this happen? Not of its own will, but because of him who subjected it. That is him, the Creator, who pushed it down, subjected it, in the hope, in the knowledge and expectation that all of this creation, all that's been pushed down, will also be set free from its slavery to corruption and brought into the freedom of the glory of the children of God. So God pushed down the creation so that as human beings become the first fruits of redemption and become sons of God who we're supposed to be, then we eventually bring all the rest of creation up into the glories that we ourselves experience in Jesus Christ. Now that's good news. And that's amazing. Let's go back again. All of creation, visible and invisible. I think probably the invisible is even bigger than the visible. Can't prove it. That's my intuition. And human beings are responsible for lifting this up. Not God. I mean, we do it through God, you understand? But it says all of creation is waiting for not for God to show up, but for the sons of God to show up. That's us. All right, one more verse and then we'll be done. This is in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 3. I'll start in verse 2. Paul is here being kind of stern with the Corinthians, and he says, what? Don't you guys know that the saints will judge? The saints is all of us, by the way. It's not a special category. In Paul's writing, saints are not, saints. They're people of God. All the people of God are saints. Saints will judge the world. And if the world is judged by you, see, he's calling you, the people he's in the church in Corinth was a mess. He's calling them saints. If the world is judged by you, are you not competent to constitute the smallest law course? He's talking here because there was a problem in the church where the members of the church were taking each other to court in the secular court. And Paul says, what? No, we're in charge of the world. Surely you can take care of these issues without going to court. And then he adds one more thing, which is really crazy. 1 Corinthians 6:3. Do you not know that we shall judge angels? And then he adds, how much more matters of this life? But that phrase, this is a funny one, out of left field. And I forgive my cartoonist brain is always operating. And I'm picturing the church in Corinth. By the way, if Hollywood was ever to do a movie about the church in Corinth, the perfect cast would be the Muppets. It was a crazy church. And and Paul, so they're all sitting there, and probably in somebody's larger house, their house church, if you will. They didn't have church buildings. And they've received a letter, a scroll from Brother Paul, from the Apostle Paul, and somebody stands up in front of them and is reading the letter to them. And I always get a kick out of imagining when the guy reading, or gal reading up front, says, "Do you not know that we shall judge angels?" And I always picture the Muppets in the crowd going, oh yeah, we knew that. Tell us something we didn't know. Like, how are they supposed to know? There must be some hints in the Old Testament somewhere that I have not ferreted out at this point. It's lazy. I need to do a study of that. But what a crazy statement. We will judge angels. Now, let me flesh that out just a little bit and make sure I'm not manipulating Scripture, but I just want to understand, when a Pharisee, a Jew, a Hebrew of Hebrews, Jew of Jews, Pharisee like Paul uses the word judge, it has some connotations that we don't have. The cartoon brain in my is I got a guy in a white wig, right, and going with a gavel, bam, guilty, or a Queen of Hearts, off with his head. So that's what we think of judge, but to the Hebrew mind, there's a book of judges, right? And certainly they made adjudications, they made decisions, but they were basically rulers. They were guides, wise, careful guides and rulers. And I think there's at least hints of that when Paul uses this. Don't you guys know we're going to give leadership to angels? So those few verses is where I get the notion that in eternity, we, the sons and daughters of God, ladies, you're a son of God, women, men, we're a part of the bride of Christ, right? That in eternity, we will actually be going out. And I can't prove that exactly, but I know we're going to be working in heaven. I know it's not going to be it's not going to be a time of floating on clouds and playing harps. You know that, of course. But it's not even going to be time of rest. It's going to be time of work. Why? Because we are working creatures. In our authentic, true nature, we were created to work. We just weren't created to work in a broken universe. We were created to work in a perfect universe, and that's what we'll be doing. So the work we're going to be doing, I think, is going to be going out and rescuing thrones, dominions, rulers, authorities. And all of these, of course, are just catch-all terms. The word angel is a catch-all term for all kinds of creatures and beings. Maybe you've heard me say in some of my other blogs, I think there are angels, as many different kinds of angels as there are flora and fauna on planet Earth. There's angels from the size of a gnat to the size of a galaxy. And in fact, the Scripture has, I think, 9. I Googled this question a few days ago, and it came up with, I think, 7. But there's guardian angels, watcher angels, angels of fire, cherubim, seraphim, archangels, there's 6, killer angels, and hornets. One time, that's 8, and that's just off the top of my head. So the Bible is full of different categories. Same thing with demons. We tend to think in simple. There's angels and there's demons. No. There's a whole plethora. And again, thrones, rulers, dominions, powers give us a little sneak insight into that reality. So I hope that's interesting to you. And there will be more in some of my future books about this concept of rescuing beings, some of which rebelled, like demons and Satan. Others of which, by the way, okay, wait, I just stepped into a pile of it. I don't want to get into the debate, is Satan going to be renewed? Maybe not. Logically, it makes sense, but it's not a huge issue to me because it's so far out, I'm not responsible for it. But clearly, I say clearly, there are beings that were pushed down, not of their own choice. How do I know they're beings? Romans 8, because they have choice, will. They're volitional beings. And Romans 8 says they didn't choose to sin. They were just subjected to frustration by the Creator. So that in the future they'll be brought up. All right, I'm repeating myself. Hope that's fun and interesting. Look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye-bye.